My name is Lauren Beckett. I am 36 years old, and until last Friday, I thought I had finally found a way to feel like I belonged in my own family. I had just finished finalizing the details for my father's 70th birthday, a full vacation package in Key West for 16 people, 3 ocean view villas, a private chef for the week, and even a jazz trio scheduled to play on the first night. Everything was ready, every penny paid from my own account. $56,300 carefully saved over a year. Not because I was rich, but because I thought, maybe if I pulled off the perfect celebration, I'd finally earn a place at their table. I grew up being the afterthought, the quiet one, the one who didn't quite match. My younger brother Miles always sparkled in their eyes class president, medical school, everything a parent could want. I was the one who worked in finance cold numbers, as my mother once said with a sigh, and lived alone with a rescue dog in an apartment full of old books. Still, I thought maybe this trip would change something. I imagined my father's face when he saw the slideshow I created, all the childhood memories, the black and white photos of his younger self, letters I secretly gathered from his former art students. I imagined laughter, gratitude, maybe even affection. I imagined being seen. That fantasy shattered the moment I pulled into my parents' driveway to drop off the printed itineraries. My mother, Deborah Beckett, stood at the top of the steps in a cream linen blouse and perfectly ironed trousers. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She waited. I stepped out of the car with a folder in my hand and a small gift bag with the monogram passport cover I had custom ordered for Dad. She didn't even look at it. "Lauren," she said, her voice calm and rehearsed. "We've all talked. We've all agreed. About what I asked. You're not welcome at the birthday trip." My breath caught. I stared at her, waiting for a smirk, a twitch, anything that suggested she was joking. But Deborah never joked. Her smile was real, though tight and satisfied. Why, I asked quietly. She tilted her head slightly. "You've made things complicated lately. All your questions, your obsession with the past, your constant pushing. This trip is for your father's peace, and frankly for ours. We've decided not to include you. We." That word struck like ice in my chest. "We. You mean you and Miles," I said. "And the rest of the family. It's unanimous." For a moment I just stood there. Then I looked down at the itinerary in my hand. The gold lettering, the careful formatting, the hours of work. I smiled. "Good to know," I said. I pulled out my phone and opened the app for the travel agency. One tap, refund requested. Another app, bank transfer initiated. Then the airline, then the car rentals. I moved fast, smooth, efficient, like she always said I was when it came to numbers. Deborah watched but didn't say a word. By the time I got back in the car, the entire vacation was gone. No trip, no jazz trio, no ocean view welcome dinner, no slideshow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just left. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. 18 missed calls, 11 voicemails, most from Miles, one from Aunt Darlene. And then a single message from Miles, short and sharp. "I just saw the email chain. You need to see this." Something about his tone made my stomach twist. Because here's the thing. I had already suspected something for weeks. Ever since I found an old fax in my mother's filing cabinet while looking for photos for Dad's slideshow. It was dated April 1987, a medical record, a birth note from a hospital in Bristol, Rhode Island. The name of the patient had been blacked out, but not well. I could still make out my first name faint under the marker. It was the first time I realized that something about my origin didn't add up. And now, standing on the edge of another rejection, I had to wonder, was this about more than just me being difficult? Was this about me never really being a Beckett at all? What I didn't know then was that this email Miles mentioned would confirm everything, that my mother had built a life out of secrets, that the perfect family photo was stitched together with lies, and that the father I thought I knew, he had no idea either. This is the story of how I lost a family vacation and found the truth about who I really was. The next morning, I drove back to Boston, mind racing the entire 2-hour drive. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. I just let the silence stretch, broken only by the occasional buzz of another missed call from Miles. By the time I got home, there was a folder waiting in my inbox. No subject line. Just a file titled Read This. I opened it. Inside were forwarded emails years old between my mother and a woman named Margaret, my godmother supposedly. Margaret had been at every family event since I was little. She gave me a Bible on my 8th birthday and took me shopping for my first prom dress. I had never doubted she was just family. But these emails were different. Cold, transactional. She's asking again about the Bristol file. One message read, "You need to keep it locked up. Don't let her get too close to the Beckett name." Another more chilling. She doesn't need to know she wasn't planned. Richard would never have agreed to raise her if he knew the truth. "You said we'd bury this." My throat went dry. I scrolled further. There was a mention of a man's name, Craig Delaney, a social worker apparently, someone who had once worked at a transitional shelter in Providence, Rhode Island in the late 1980s. I copied the name into Google and began to dig. By the afternoon, I had pieced together more than I was ready for. Craig had been involved in several closed adoptions during that era, many of which had been arranged outside of formal channels. I found a court docket sealed under the name Delaney versus State Department of Children and Families 1987. It matched the same month I was born. I had spent most of my adult life working with precision. My job required it. Managing other people's wealth meant you never assumed, never jumped to conclusions. But in that moment, with printouts spread across my kitchen table and coffee gone cold, I made a decision. I would find out the truth. The first person I called was Miles. He picked up on the second ring. I didn't know he said before I could say anything. I swear to God, Lauren, I didn't know she had hidden all of that. "You saw the emails I asked." He exhaled. "Yeah, I was in Dad's office looking for the trip itinerary." He left his laptop open. I saw the thread. It goes back years. Did he see it? No, I don't think so. Silence stretched between us. "You know what this means, right?" I asked. "That she never wanted you in the first place," he said, his voice low. "That she's been lying to both of us. No denial, no soft landing. Just facts." I let that truth settle. It wasn't new. I had always felt it in ways too subtle to name her tone when she spoke to me, the way she'd correct my posture, my voice, even my breathing. Nothing about me had ever felt welcome. Later that evening, I drove to our childhood home not to speak with my mother, but to talk to my father. He wasn't there. Only Deborah answered the door. "Should have known you'd come," she said, sipping tea, like nothing had happened. "What's next? You gonna publish our secrets on the front page? Why, I asked. Why what? Why take me in if you were going to hate me for existing?" She didn't flinch, because I had no choice. Your biological mother was in no shape to raise you. And Richard thought, well, he believed we were helping a distant cousin, that it would be temporary. And when it became permanent, I asked. I adapted. By lying. By protecting what I built, she snapped. Your father is a fragile man. He doesn't do well with disruptions. My laugh was bitter. So you erase the disruption I raised you, she said flatly. I gave you a name, a home, and look how you repay me, digging through old files like some detective ruining a celebration meant for peace. Peace built on lies, I said. You always wanted to be a martyr, she hissed. Well, congratulations. I walked out. Back in my apartment, I pulled up the slideshow I had built for my father. There were dozens of old family photos, video clips from his years as an art professor, voice memos from his students sharing what he meant to them. I added one more thing, a timeline. It started with my birth certificate, the hospital name in Bristol, a date that didn't match the one on my official documents, a record of an anonymous adoption request, copies of the emails Deborah had sent over the years about hiding my identity, about keeping Richard in the dark, and at the end, a simple title card, The Truth You Were Never Meant to See. I uploaded it to a private YouTube link. Then I texted it to my father. 10 minutes passed, then 30, then 1 hour. No reply. But just before midnight, he called. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Lauren, he said, his voice small. Is it true I wouldn't lie to you? I said. I need to see you, he said. Can you come tomorrow, please? For the first time since I was 17, he sounded like someone I could believe in. The next morning, I drove to the small studio he used to rent after retiring. It sat above an old bookstore in Cambridge, tucked between brick alleys and ivy-covered buildings. I found him on the balcony, wrapped in a wool cardigan, staring out at the skyline. He looked older. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. He turned and I saw that he had been crying. "I watched it twice," he said. Then a third time. Then I sat here until the sun came up. I didn't speak. I just waited. "She told me you were our niece's baby," he said. "That it was temporary. That the mother was ill and needed help. She said if I bonded too quickly, it would make the parting harder. And when no one came to get me, she said the mother had disappeared. That we were doing the right thing by keeping you. Did you believe her?" He took a long pause. I wanted to. Then he looked at me. "But Lauren, nothing about loving you was ever fake. Not once. I changed your diapers, taught you to ride a bike, held your hand at every dentist appointment because you were terrified of the sound." His voice cracked. "I was your father, even if I didn't know how you came to me." "I know," I said, and I meant it. "I should have asked more questions," he whispered. "You were busy loving me," I said. "That counts." He smiled through tears. "I always thought you were the strongest one." "Deborah didn't," I said. "No," he agreed. "She feared you. That word again, fear." "What happens now?" I asked. He stood slowly. "That's up to you. But I want you to know, I'm done pretending everything's fine. And I'm not going on that damn birthday trip." I blinked. "I canceled it," I said. His head tilted. "You did?" I nodded. "Took back every cent. Nobody's flying to paradise on my dime while telling me I don't belong." He chuckled, a real deep, delighted sound. "Good," he said. We stood together on that balcony, two people no longer clinging to a version of family that never truly existed. We weren't perfect, but we were finally telling the truth. 2 weeks passed. The official story was that my father had fallen ill and decided not to travel. Deborah told everyone it was stress-related. She told the extended family I had a meltdown and canceled the trip out of spite. She told Miles to stop trying to mediate chaos. But something was shifting. Miles started calling more. He sent over 2 more email chains, older than the first batch this time, with more explicit details. In one, my mother had written to Margaret, her friend, who'd helped organize the adoption. "She's digging too much. It's only a matter of time. I kept her out of this family the best I could. But Richard still looks at her like she's his." In another, "If she finds out everything, he'll leave me. He'll always choose her. Choose me." That line stunned me. I never thought of myself as someone who could be chosen. Certainly not over Deborah. But somewhere deep in her cold, clinical mind, my mother had known the truth for decades. Love isn't inherited by blood. It's built in moments. And somewhere between scraped knees and late-night math homework, my father had built something real with me. Which is why I finally decided to show him what I had found in Rhode Island. It started with the name Craig Delaney, the social worker mentioned in the emails. I called half a dozen state offices until one assistant agreed to speak off the record. Delaney had died in 2005, but some of his handwritten logs were archived at the shelter he once helped run. The assistant emailed me a scan. There was one note written in shaky cursive, April 14th. Private drop-off. No name given. Infant girl. Mother appeared terrified, refused to provide family details. Left a note. The note wasn't scanned. The original had been stored in a box marked non-legal. I asked if I could come see it. 2 days later, I was in Providence, walking into a dim storage room in the back of an old Catholic charity building. A volunteer named Joan handed me a folder, her hand shaking slightly. Inside was a sheet of aged paper with a smudge of lipstick in the corner. The handwriting was loopy, unsure. "To whoever holds her next, please give her a name. Please tell her I wanted her to have more than I could give. I'm sorry. I will always be sorry." It was signed only with the letter C. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the paper until the ink blurred. Joan offered me coffee. I nodded. We sat in the hallway, paper cups in hand. She was maybe 17, Joan said softly. Came in with a sweatshirt tied around her waist. Wouldn't say much, just cried. Told me she was going to leave town after. Did she say her name Clara? She said after a pause. She said her name was Clara. I repeated it in my head like a mantra. Clara. On the drive home, I called my father. I want to find her, I told him. He didn't hesitate. Then let's go. We flew to Connecticut that weekend. There was a small town called Stillwater listed in one of the adoption records, a place Clara had once listed as her mailing address. It was nothing more than a few gas stations, a library, and a church at the top of a hill. But when we asked around, someone remembered the name Clara Winters. Used to live out near Green Hollow Road, an old man said from behind the counter at the general store. Haven't seen her in years. Heard she moved down south. My father turned to me. Do you want to keep chasing this? Yes, I said. Because no one ever chased me. We didn't find Clara. Not that week. Maybe never. But I found something better, a gravestone, tucked under an old maple tree at the edge of the churchyard. It read, Clara E. Winters, 1970 to 1994. Beloved daughter. Brave soul. She died young, Dad whispered. But she tried, I said. She tried to protect me. Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop. I uploaded a second video, this one not for the party, but for myself. A montage of everything I had learned, a short voiceover, a simple dedication for the woman who gave me life and the man who made me feel like I belonged in it. I never published it. But it was mine. The next twist came 3 days later. I was in the office reviewing a portfolio for a client when I got a text from Miles. You might want to answer this one. Attached a voicemail file. From Deborah. I put on my headphones. Her voice was tight, almost mechanical. I know you've spoken to him. I know he believes you. You've twisted everything. You're painting me as a villain in a story I never wanted. I did what I had to. I protected our family. If you had just stayed in your lane, if you had just accepted your place, none of this would be happening. Then a pause, a quiet breath, and softer. But maybe you never were mine to manage. That was the closest thing to an apology I ever got. 2 weeks later, Miles asked to meet. We chose a quiet cafe off the Riverwalk. He looked exhausted, pale. I'm sorry, he said before we even sat down. For not seeing it sooner, for going along with it. You were trained to, I said. We both were. I didn't know she was capable of this kind of manipulation. You did, I replied gently. You just didn't want to name it. He nodded. I want a relationship with you, he said. Not out of guilt, but because I finally see how strong you are. And I want that strength in my life. I looked at him. For the first time in years, I saw my little brother. Not the perfect son, just a person. Trying. I don't trust you yet, I said. That's fair, but I'm willing to try. And so we did. The last confrontation was with Deborah. Dad had invited me and Miles to brunch. When I arrived, she was already seated. A gray sweater, no pearls, no makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. I'm not here to defend myself, she said, or to be forgiven. Then why come, I asked. Because I don't want to die as the version of myself I became. The words were soft, almost too soft. I started therapy, she continued. Real therapy. Not the kind where you lie to your counselor. And I'm starting to realize I spent my whole life trying to control everything because I was afraid of losing it. She looked up. And you, Lauren, scared me the most because you never needed me to become someone. You just were. I didn't respond. I failed you, she whispered. As a mother, as a woman, as a human being. Still, I said nothing. But if you ever feel like letting me earn a place in your life, even as a quiet, distant presence, I will be here. At your pace. On your terms. She stood, gathered her coat. At the door, I asked her one last question. Did you ever love me? She paused. Yes, she said. But not well. And then she was gone. That night, Dad and I sat on his porch, the wind rustling through the last of autumn leaves. You okay? He asked. No, I said, but I'm not lost anymore. He nodded. That's something. We watched the sky turn purple and blue. We should still take a trip, he said suddenly, to where anywhere that never required permission. We laughed. Later, when I went home, I opened my journal, and I wrote I was not a mistake. I was a secret. But now I am a story, and I get to tell it. 3 months after everything unraveled, my father and I took that trip. It wasn't to a foreign country or some grand Mediterranean villa. No. We chose something simpler, quieter, a lakeside cabin in northern Vermont. No Wi-Fi, no TV, just a wood-burning stove, a small dock, and a stack of old books from the 1960s. It snowed the first night, thick flakes that covered the porch steps and softened the trees. I watched from the window as Dad built a fire, humming softly. I hadn't heard him hum since I was a child. Something about the silence, the safety of this space allowed old parts of us to resurface. We didn't talk about Deborah. We didn't need to. Instead, we talked about books, about favorite movies, about how he once wanted to live in Paris, but stayed in Massachusetts because of family obligations. He told me about his regrets, how he spent too long letting silence keep the peace, how he mistook quietness for kindness, how he now understood that sometimes peace is just the name we give to control when we're too afraid to fight. One afternoon, we went hiking. The trail was icy, but the air was sharp and clean. When we reached the top, we sat on a bench looking over a frozen lake. "I think I used to be afraid of you," he said suddenly. I turned to him. "Not of who you were," he clarified, "but of how clearly you saw through everything. You were the only one who ever asked questions." "I never felt like I had a right to," I replied. He shook his head. "You always did. And I should have told you that sooner." That night over hot cocoa, he handed me an envelope. "I found this in the garage. It was in one of your old art boxes. Inside was a drawing I made at 9 years old, a stick figure family, Dad smiling, me standing beside him, a big red heart between us. But where my mother should have been, I had scribbled her out, crayon scratch marks covering the face. You knew," he said softly. "Even back then." I held the paper for a long time. "I just wanted to be seen," I whispered. "You were. By me. Always," he replied. We stayed at the cabin for 4 days, no drama, no roles to perform, just space to be who we were without pretense. And then we went home, back to Boston, back to the city where everything had started to fall apart, except now the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. In the weeks that followed, Miles and I continued to talk. Small things mostly. Memes, recipes, dog videos, but every conversation built a brick, and slowly a bridge began to form. He sent me a photo one night, a framed picture of us as kids, sitting on a beach with popsicles melting down our hands. Caption, "I want to earn my seat back beside you," I replied. "We're not kids anymore. You don't need to sit beside me. You just need to stand with me." He sent a heart emoji. That was enough. Deborah, for her part, remained distant, but she kept her word. She started sending me emails, no demands, no defenses, just small things. A picture she found of me at a science fair, a book she thought I might like. Once she even mailed a recipe for my favorite childhood stew in her handwriting. No expectations, no pressure, just presence. We met for coffee once. She was quiet, fidgety. She didn't wear pearls. She didn't correct my posture. "I don't know how to be a different person," she admitted. "But I'm trying." I didn't answer right away. But I didn't leave either. That was progress. She didn't apologize again, and I didn't ask her to. Some things don't need repetition. Some things are too fragile for that. I still didn't trust her. I probably never would fully. But I also didn't hate her anymore. Hatred is heavy. I was tired of carrying it. Now I carry something else, something lighter, discernment. One Sunday, Dad invited Miles and me over for dinner. Nothing elaborate, just pasta, garlic bread, a bottle of cheap red wine. I brought a dessert. We ate in the kitchen. No centerpieces, no forced conversation, no one performing. At the end of the night, Dad raised his glass. "To the family we choose to rebuild." We clinked glasses, and I felt something I hadn't in years. Warmth, not perfection, not performance, but real, quiet warmth. People sometimes ask if I ever found Clara, my birth mother. The answer is no. But I found her story. I found her fear, her courage, her sorrow, all scribbled into the note she left beside me. And in a way, I think that's enough. I no longer need the reunion fantasy. I no longer wait for someone to complete the picture, because I finally understand that I am the picture. Full, complex, enough. I started writing a journal the day after I returned from Vermont. At first, it was just notes, memories, fragments of moments I didn't want to forget. But slowly, it became something more, a record not of what happened to me, but of what I chose to become. I wrote, I am not a bystander in my own story. I am not the outsider at the family table. I am the architect of my peace. I build the space I deserve to live in. And I set the table for those who see me clearly. It's been almost a year now since I canceled a trip I paid for, since I was told, we all agreed you're not welcome, since I walked away from the fantasy of a family that was never mine to begin with. But in that ending, something else began. A life without permission, a life without performance, a life where I no longer ask, can I be included? Now I ask, do you deserve a seat here? Because this table I've built, this space I've claimed, it's not open to everyone, only to those who bring honesty, softness, and the willingness to see the whole me. To anyone out there who has been cast out of their own family's story, to the daughters who were never adored, the sons who were silenced, the siblings who were labeled too emotional, the ones who were erased for being inconvenient. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unlovable. You are simply too real to be contained inside someone else's illusion. And that, my friend, is your power. So cancel the trip, close the door, pack your bag and walk forward into the story only you can write, not as someone begging for a place, but as the hero standing at the center of her own life, still here, still rising, and just getting started.